What's up YouTube, Zero here, and today I have an absolutely amazing Pikachu EX deck in Pokemon TCG Pocket. In this video, I'll go over the deck build that you can see on the left hand side of the screen. I'll talk about each of these cards individually, and I'll talk about why you should definitely be checking this deck out. It's an absolutely phenomenal electric type deck, although there are a lot of great electric decks in the game right now, especially thanks to Oricorio, but I'll talk about Oricorio a little bit later in this video. Before I get into it, I do want to say if you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon TCG content. I do a bunch of other video games, so feel free to check those out as well. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. Without further ado, let's talk about this deck. Now, electric decks are pretty solid in Pokemon TCG Pocket, really thanks to Oricorio, because Oricorio's ability is absolutely phenomenal and can stonewall a lot of different Pokemon. But Pikachu, the different types of Pikachus, there are different Pikachu EXs in the game right now, and I actually have two of them in this deck. But Pikachu is absolutely a phenomenal card as well and can really set your team up nicely, if not closing off. Both of the Pikachus have various aspects that make them phenomenal in their own right, and depending upon where you're at in battle, each of these Pikachus can be utilized. So, let's talk about Pikachu more in depth. And just something to note is that this deck has actually done pretty well in some recent tournaments. I've looked at some of the results, and this deck has done pretty well. So this is a really good deck to check out if you're looking for an electric type deck, especially one with Pikachu, because let's be honest, Pikachu is absolutely iconic and a fantastic Pokemon. So let's talk about the two different Pikachus, because each of them do something very differently. They're good at what they do, but they need to be utilized at different parts of the game. Now, I'm going to talk about the first Pikachu, and this is going to be the one from the Genetic EPIC Pikachu packs. That's the packs that started it all off, the first packs that were released with the game. So Pikachu EX, this Pikachu EX from the Genetic EPIC Pikachu packs, for 2 electric energy has Circle Circuit, 3 times damage. So this attack does 30 damage for each of your benched electric Pokemon. So you're going to have to build up some electric type Pokemon on the bench, but for just 2 energy, if you're able to do that, you're going to be hitting 490 damage. So if you're able to get a lot of Pokemon out onto the playing field relatively quickly, this Pikachu EX is going to be phenomenal to start the battle off. You can just, for 2 energy, start attacking for 90 damage, which is pretty great. You load your bench up, and you start attacking for just 2 energy. And while you're attacking with that 2 energy, you can start building up energy on the bench wherever you need to. Of course, in this deck, you can see a decent amount of Pokemon that are in this deck. You can start really building up that energy and attacking with Pikachu EX, the Genetic EPIC Pikachu pack, Pikachu EX, pretty quickly for some very high damage. 90 is no joke. It can 2-hit KO a lot of powerful Pokemon in the game and sneakily take out a lot of lesser Pokemon in the game. So it is a phenomenal Pikachu to have in this deck. Next, let's talk about the other Pikachu, and this is the Pikachu EX from the Shining Revelry packs, and I see this Pikachu EX as more of the closer of the deck. After you've dealt a lot of damage, maybe you've already gotten a point on the board, this Pikachu EX is going to come in and finish the match for you, because it does take a little while to build up the energy on this Pikachu, at least a little bit more so than the other Pikachu, because this Pikachu requires 3 energy. It's not saying you can't get it relatively quickly, and I'm going to talk about the different Pokemon in this deck that can help you. It just seems more so that this Pikachu is going to be a little bit more of a closer. Again, not saying it can't start out in that active spot. It absolutely can, but it's better to finish off the game. You get this Pikachu ready to go because it's dealing massive amounts of damage. So this Pikachu for 3 electric energy, Thunderbolt for 150 damage. But after you do attack with Thunderbolt, you're going to discard all of the energy from this Pikachu. So this deals a lot of damage. 150 is going to clear a lot of very powerful, really common Pokemon. Giratina has 150 HP. Darkrai EX has 140 HP. So those are two of the more popular EX Pokemon. Shining Revelry Charizard has around that amount of HP, has 170. So you're going to be taking out a lot of HP from that Charizard. Arceus has 140 HP, so you're going to be dealing a lot of damage to some of the popular Pokemon. You're going to be one-hit KOing a lot of the popular Pokemon. So I absolutely love this Pikachu. But the reason why I say it's not really one you want to put in the active spot is because it's going to be taking a couple of hits if you have it in that active spot early on before it's going to be attacking. Now, there are a couple of Pokemon in this deck that can absolutely help with that, such as Zeraora, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but I prefer this Pikachu to not take any damage early on. I like to come in with it at the end of the game to finish off my opponent's Pokemon. I like to start in that active slot with either Oricorio to stonewall my opponent's EX Pokemon, or my genetic apex Pikachu, or Pichu to start building up that energy. So this is more of the closer Pikachu that's going to come in at the end of the match with 150 damage ready to go. Energy built up on your Pokemon on the bench, because then you can flip that energy onto this Pikachu. So next, let's talk about a Pokemon I was just mentioning, Zeraora. So Zeraora can actually really help generate energy onto Pikachu. If you do end up starting with it in the active slot, you can really get a jump on your opponent's Pokemon if you're lucky enough to have this Pikachu with Zeraora starting the match. Zeraora is great to start the match in either the active slot or the bench because of its ability. Now, Zeraora's ability is Thunderclap Flash. At the end of your first turn, take an electric energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. So it doesn't matter if you start first or you start second. As long as Zeraora is on the playing field by the end of your first turn, you get to take an energy from the energy zone and attach it to Zeraora. This is nice for several reasons. Of course, energy buildup is always going to be important when it comes to Pokemon TCG Pocket. That's how you're going to attack. That's how you're going to take out your enemies. So if you're lucky enough to have Pikachu in that active slot, your Shining Revelry Pikachu, you went second. You can attach an energy from your energy zone. Of course, it's going to leave your Pikachu a little bit vulnerable, but you attach an energy from your energy zone on your first turn. Your second turn, you get another energy. You can utilize Elemental Switch to move up that energy from Zeraora from Thunderclap Flash, and you can attack with Thunderbolt relatively quickly. That's where this might be a little bit useful in terms of right off the bat. But when we're talking about it, we have Elemental Switch, which for those of you who don't know, you get to take energy from one of your Pokemon and you get to move it to the Pokemon in the active slot. Of course, this is limited to either electric, fire, or water energy. But what's nice about Zeraora is you can get that energy to start the match, and you can kind of let it sit there. You don't have to have Pikachu EX in that active slot and move it up on your second turn. You're just getting that extra energy, kind of biding your time to utilize that energy. So regardless of the moment your Pikachu EX Thunderbolt attacks, you can still utilize Elemental Switch with that Zeraora to move it up to the active slot. So it's great to get that energy jump on your opponent, because if you do need to put out your Thunderbolt Pikachu into that active slot to take out a powerful Pokemon, you're gonna be losing all of the energy off your Pikachu. So any energy that's built up on the bench is gonna be nice to have, because you can utilize Elemental Switch to turbocharge your Pikachu EX a little bit quicker. Now do note, you can actually use 2 elemental switches on the same turn. So as long as you do have some energy built up, 2 energy on your bench, after you attack with your Thunderbolt for your Pikachu and you lose all your energy, you can equip 1 energy from the energy zone onto your Pikachu. Then you can utilize 2 elemental switches to take 2 energy from your Pokemon on the bench, put it onto your Pikachu, and attack a second turn in a row. So that extra energy from Zero Aura is going to be phenomenal for this. It's also going to be phenomenal to attach energy when you need to, utilizing Elemental Switch, because sometimes the match may dictate it. But Zero Aura's elemental draw from that energy zone is going to be nice because you're going to have that extra energy. So Zero Aura is going to be found in the Extra Dimensional Crisis pack. So just be aware that the one I do have, the one that's full art, was a promo, but you can find Zero Aura in the Extra Dimensional Crisis pack. So be on the lookout for it. Then it is a very good card to put in your electric decks. Next, let's talk about Oricorio. Oricorio is a phenomenal card and can be found in almost every electric deck. If you're not preparing to face Oricorio, you're not going to have a fun time against electric decks. Most decks nowadays are preparing some form of combat against Oricorio because of Oricorio's ability Safeguard. And Safeguard prevents all damage done to the Pokemon by attack from your opponent's Pokemon EX. This means it can absolutely stonewall any EX Pokemon from direct attacks. Of course, there are ways around it. You can damage with Darkrai's ability. You equip Dark Energy onto Darkrai and you can damage for 20, but 20 isn't a lot. So it's going to take your opponent a lot to chip away at Oricorio if they haven't prepared for it. But what's nice about Oricorio is it can stonewall EX Pokemon. You could put it into that active slot and not take damage from any EX Pokemon. This is going to force your opponent to try and find a way around your Oricorio. So while your Oricorio is there stonewalling your opponent, you're chipping away with its attack Zap for 1 electric energy and 1 colorless energy, so 2 energy total, dealing 50 damage. You're also building up that energy on the bench. And like I mentioned earlier, that energy on the bench is going to be crucial for Thunderbolt Pikachu and Elemental Switch. Even if you don't have Pikachu on the playing field and you're not able to attach energy to it, you are going to have Elemental Switch ready to go. So when you do have to put Thunderbolt Pikachu into that active slot, you can utilize your Elemental Switches to power Pikachu up. So not drawing Pikachu EX right away to put that energy on it isn't going to be the end of the world. But just remember, we can attack with our other Pikachu for 90 damage as long as we have a full bench, which is still a decent amount of damage. Oricorio is going to be found in the Celestial Guardian Solgaleo packs. Now a Pokemon that can really get us on the right foot is going to be Pichu. Baby Pokemon were introduced into the game in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky packs. Pichu can be found in the Lugia specific Wisdom of Sea and Sky packs, but Pichu can put your team on the right foot. So if you do start first or second, it really doesn't matter because Pichu does not cost an energy to utilize Crackly Toss, which is its move. You take 1 electric energy from your energy zone and you attach it to one of your benched basic Pokemon. But if you look at this deck, they're all basic Pokemon. So you can take an energy from your energy zone with Pichu, regardless of the turn, if you start first or second, and attach it to one of your benched basic Pokemon, meaning you're gonna get the energy start quickly, which is nice. If you start second, you can attach 2 energy on that turn, 1 from Pichu's move and 1 from the energy zone, which is going to be nice. But even if you start first, you get to attach the first energy, which is going to be great for the energy buildup on any of your Pokemon. Hopefully you have a Pokemon on your bench that's really going to start helping you out. And to be honest, all of these Pokemon can help you out in one way or another. But Pichu is absolutely phenomenal for this deck to really start building up that energy. then last but not least, there's going to be, just note, one Raikou in this deck. Raikou does deal a decent amount of damage, and Raikou is going to really help with Oricorio if you are facing another Oricorio deck, because Oricorio has 70 HP, Raikou deals 70 damage. So for 2 energy, 1 electric, 1 colorless, is Thunder, deals 70 damage. Of course, Raikou is also going to deal 20 damage to itself, but at least, barring any giant cape, Raikou is going to one-hit KO an opponent's Oricorio. So that's just something to note. And of course, extra Pokemon in this deck are always welcome because you have Pikachu EX from the Genetic Apex packs that likes having those Pokemon on the bench so you can attack for 90 damage. I've already talked about it, but let's just mention it again briefly. Elemental Switch is absolutely phenomenal. You can move a fire, water, or in this case, electric energy from one of your benched Pokemon to your active Pokemon. So this is going to help turbocharge your Pokemon regardless of the Pokemon in the active slot. Typically, I like to use it on Thunderbolt Pikachu, but it can help out in a lot of different scenarios. Say I had to retreat a Pokemon, and I put a Pokemon into that active slot that doesn't have enough energy to attack, I can utilize Elemental Switch for that Pokemon. And Elemental Switch is going to be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky Lugia packs. Next, a couple of basics. Pokeball. Draw a basic Pokemon from your deck to your hand. Of course, we have all basics, but this is going to be nice, especially to power up our Pikachu EX Genetic Apex. And Professor's Research, you draw 2 cards. Next, there's 1 X Speed. This is going to help save some energy if, for whatever reason, you have to retreat a Pokemon from the active slot. X Speed is going to be nice to have, especially when combined with Elemental Switch, because you can save that energy. You can utilize X Speed, save the energy, and then utilize Elemental Switch if needed to power up whichever Pokemon is in the active slot. So just be aware of that X Speed is going to be nice for this deck. There is one of those in this deck. Next, a bunch of different supporter cards. I mentioned earlier that there are certain Pokemon, such as Charizard, that may have 170 HP or greater than 150 HP. Red is going to be here to one-hit KO some of those Pokemon. 160, 170 HP. There are going to be some EX Pokemon, very powerful EX Pokemon, that have that much HP. Red is going to help by dealing 20 extra damage to EX Pokemon. So when combined with our Thunderbolt Pikachu, that's now up to 170 damage, which is going to be very welcome to one-hit KO some Pokemon. It can also avoid Pokemon that may have a giant cape equipped, such as Giratina that I mentioned earlier. Giratina has 150 HP. If it equips a giant cape, it's now up to 170. So Red is going to help one-hit KO Pokemon in that fashion. And Red is going to be found in the Shining Revelry packs. Next, Cyrus. Cyrus is going to be phenomenal because you're going to deal damage to Pokemon, but it may not always be KO damage. You have Genetic Apex Pikachu EX that is dealing 90 damage at most. It could deal 60, it could deal 30. So that's going to give your opponents an opportunity to retreat. You have Zeraora that deals 50, or Oricorio that deals 50. A lot of Pokemon that may not be one-hit KOing opponents' Pokemon. It's going to give them an opportunity to retreat. Cyrus is going to make sure that they can't hide on the bench. So Cyrus, for those of you who don't know, you switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has damage on it to the active spot. And this is going to be found in these Space-Time Smackdown Palkia packs. Next, Mars is in this deck. Of course, Mars can be a game changer. Mars, your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of their remaining points needed to win. So Mars, you kind of need to use strategically. If at the beginning of the game your opponent was able to draw a lot of cards, they have a lot of cards in their hand, you may want to use Mars to send all of those cards back to their deck and allow them to draw just 3 cards because they have 3 points left to win. It could be utilized at the end of a match when your opponent has only 1 point left to win to send all of their cards back to their deck and they can only draw 1 card. So they can't utilize a lot of the cards in their hand against you. Maybe it's a Cyrus or a Sabrina. You're going to send a lot of that back into their hand. So I do like Mars in this deck. Again, it's going to be found in these Space-Time Smackdown Palkia packs. Last but not least, Silver. Silver is a pretty nice card. For those of you who don't know, it was just released in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky Holo packs. Your opponent reveals their hand. You choose a supporter card you find in there and shuffle it into your opponent's deck. So that's going to be nice to get rid of a supporter card your opponent may need. So I do like Silver in this deck. Can really change the game by throwing a supporter card back into their deck. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what changes you'd make to this deck to make it even better. Until next time, peace.